Hey folks, welcome back to the final episode in the Toaster series, and it's time to see how this thing performs. So last episode you saw that it turns on, but no one has any idea how well this is going to do when the CPU and the GPU are under load, so let's give it a go. So we've already spent about a day just installing every possible update, all the firmware for all the components, and everything is running flawlessly. It's working really, really nicely. It's idling at a really good temperature. So let me just show you that first. So over here we've got the fan curves that we're currently running. We've got the fans based on the CPU or the GPU temperature, whichever is highest, and as you can see we've got quite an aggressive fan curve here. This is kind of just to give the PC the best chance of performing well, but we're not going to spend ages tweaking these to keep it quiet because the customer has said that they're quite looking forward to having a play around with the fan curves. They're like us, they're a bit nerdy and they like tweaking that kind of thing themselves, so we're going to give them that enjoyment, you might say, of playing around with the fan curves and stuff. We've got this basically here just to, this is effectively the fans are on full almost all of the time when anything is doing anything. So over here we've got the temperatures. This is at idle. The room temperature is 21.3 degrees. So fairly average room temperature. And idle temperatures, the CPU is at 32. You can see every individual core there. Nice consistent temperature across the board. We have our VRMs at 44. And then the GPU is idling at 31.3. And that's with the fans really quiet. You can see on the fan curve, we're over here, this is the current temperature, and the CPU is hotter, so that is controlling the fan curve right now. And then I can also show you the monitoring software for both of the M.2 drives. So the primary drive is sitting at 59 degrees C, and the secondary drive is sitting at 60 degrees C. And bear in mind, we are screen recording right now, so they're having data written to them right now. As I'm doing this, I can't really show you what they look like without the screen recording, but they were sitting at 49 and 50 degrees. So I think it's time now to start stress testing it. And before I start this, I should say that if it thermal throttles, we're not considering that a failure. We have been asked to fit these components in this case, and I believe that we have done the best possible job and got the best possible cooling that it's physically possible to fit in this size of case or in this specific case. So if it thermal throttles, that's okay. That was always going to happen. We're limited by the size. There's no way around that. We're hoping it doesn't thermal throttle. We've had similar components running with similar amounts of cooling and they didn't thermal throttle. But I hope that the CPU will be kept under 100 degrees, which is the thermal throttle limit, and I hope that the GPU will stay under 83 degrees, which is the thermal throttle limit. And if we can achieve that, I think that's going to be a big win for us. I will be really happy if they don't thermal throttle. I'll be amazed if they both don't thermal throttle when running on full at the same time, but that's an unrealistic test because nothing is really ever going to do that. The customer's going to be using it for like photo and video editing and gaming. So it's either going to be CPU or GPU. It's never really going to be running both on full at the same time. So with that being said, let's do it. So we're going to fire up Cinebench and we're going to do a multi-core test. So let's start that. CPU temperature is up here and we're now well within this temperature range. So the fans are basically going to be on full all the time now. And the CPU is at 68. It's really pushing some heat out. Okay, so it's not instantly thermal throttled, so that is awesome. Now it's not a massive loop, so I don't think it's going to take too long for the water to get up to its equilibrium temperature. But I'm still going to run a few CPU multi-core loads back to back just to check that we do peak at a temperature, and this is a proper test. So still we're in the 60s and 70s and the occasional low 80 degrees on the CPU. Oh, that's so good. Honestly, I was expecting it to kind of sit at about 90. Got a few 85s, 86s creeping in now. Yeah, it's really managing the heat surprisingly well. Oh, I should look at the wattage this is pulling. There we go, that's a fairly constant 253 watts. I didn't mention we installed the latest BIOS, which should have all the microcode updates for the Intel chip. So theoretically we're running completely safely here, which was quite good timing that that was released before we handed this over to the customer. So they and us have a bit of peace of mind now that this should last. We don't have to strip it all apart and replace the CPU. So we're 8 minutes into this multi-core benchmark and the CPU temperatures are just flat at 72. I haven't seen this value go above 72. There's so much heat coming out of here. It's coming out all around here. Out here, I can feel it everywhere. There's a breeze even out here. So our design is definitely working well. So yeah, it seems like it's not going to go above 72. But just to be sure, I'm going to do like 2 more back-to-back tests, and if this sticks at around the same temperature, then yeah, I think we've proven that this beast of a toaster easily handles the 253 watts of the 14900K. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the 3rd multi-core test here. We've got a couple of minutes left, and this has just been sitting dead on 72, occasionally goes to 71, occasionally goes to 73. And the individual cores, it looks like they've peaked at 88 on core 5, but nothing has come close to thermal throttling. If we look at thermal throttling, it's all nose, so that's great news. Distance to thermal throttling, nothing has come within 12 degrees of that. So that's awesome. Well done, the toaster. Oh, and bear in mind, I've been downloading a game and screen recording in the background, so really well done to the little toaster. It's doing a great job. And while this has been going on, let's look at the other temperatures. The wattage has been very consistent, 253. The VRM is currently at 73, 74. Peaked at 74. Average of 71, so that's all perfectly fine. The GPU has just been idling at about 15 watts, and yeah, very comfortable. 36 degrees maximum temperature, sitting around 35. So I'm just going to let this Cinebench test finish, just in case anything changes, and then it is GPU testing time. So everything has finished, and it's very quickly come back down to 30 to 40 degrees across all the cores. I don't quite understand why this is saying 89, because that should show the maximum of this value, and that never got above 73. So I'm probably missing something there. But yeah, we can look at all the maximum values of each core. Core 5 peaked at 89. The VRMs peaked at 74. And yeah, everything's looking really good. For the size of the PC we got, that's an amazing result, so really happy with that. Alright, so everything has cooled down, and I've got Firmark open here, and I'm going to run a GPU stress test. So hopefully this doesn't thermal throttle, but with 440 watts, which is what this seems to run at, rather than the 250 watts of the CPU, we'll see how this goes. So we're idling at 32 degrees over here, and let's go. Okay, we definitely didn't instantly throttle. We're up to 51 degrees, 52, 51. It's doing very well so far, I've got to say. So we're drawing about 415 watts fairly consistently, and we're at 53 degrees. Hotspot is about 10 degrees above that, but we're nowhere near the 83 limit. We're creeping into the mid-50s now, which is still really, really good. And I also didn't mention, we haven't done any sort of undervolting of anything. Everything's just running with the latest updates, the latest firmware and everything, but we've done nothing to try and limit the voltage or the heat or anything. Everything is just running stock. I'm really impressed with how this is doing so far. Right, let's fast forward 20 minutes. All right, so here we are, 20 minutes later, and I'm absolutely blown away with the performance of this thing. It hasn't got above 59.4 degrees. That's the GPU temperature. The hot spot has peaked at 70.4, and both of those happened. I reset the averages, so the average is 56.6 and 66.9. But since these two peak temperatures, they're about 5 minutes ago, and it hasn't gone back up to those temperatures yet. So I am confident that we are at like the plateau equilibrium temperature for both of those. And we're nowhere near throttling, and we're colder than it would be with the card air-cooled, to the best of my knowledge and research anyway. So I'm so happy with that. I was slightly concerned it would thermal throttle, as I'm sure were lots of you guys. There's so much heat coming out of here though, it feels like a fan heater. So our cooling system is working really nicely. So well done to the little toaster. Next up, we're going to play a game. We're going to play Halo Infinite, just to give it more of like a real world example of what sort of things this will be used for. So let's close this and open that. Alright, so I'm playing Halo Infinite. I'm just kind of running around. It's really hard to get the 4090 to use all its power. This is only a 2K screen. And I've booted this up before, and it was only using about 250 watts of the graphics card's power. So now I've got it set to run at 5K rather than 2K, and it's still only using 370 watts max. But that's doing that, and then the CPU is using an additional 120 watts. So I think we've shown it works, but we really want to do a full stress test with everything running at maximum. So I'm going to close this, and I'm going to run Firmark and Cinebench at the same time and do a proper hell test for this thing and see if we can get it to thermal throttle at all, because it seems to be handling everything far too well right now. So I've got everything ready for the full-on hell test here. I am screen recording. I have got Cinebench open. I'm going to do a multi-core Cinebench test. I've got the temperatures shown here for the two M.2 drives. Got the fan software up here, so you can see, I mean, we're going to be at maximum fan speeds this whole time. And then over here, we've got, obviously, as before, CPU core temperatures and package temperatures on show there, the CPU wattage, VRM temperatures, GPU temperatures, and GPU wattage is there. So I'm going to start Firmark, which will be on the other screen, not the one that's being recorded here. So let's get that going, and the Cinebench multi-core test at the same time. And I think this is where it's very likely to thermal throttle. And we are currently drawing, what's that, 670 watts in total across the CPU and the graphics card. I mean, it's not instantly thermal throttling, which is amazing. I think it will though. I think it'll get up to temperature. There's a lot of heat coming out. Ambient temperature in the room is 21.8, so we've gone up by about half a degree over the last hour or two. Somehow the GPU is still at 56, CPU is at 75. On the cores, the package is at 86. None of the case is super hot. It's definitely below human body temperature, but it's just like a fan heater coming out of here. One of the cores has hit 95 once, it's now back down to 88. This is pretty nuts that this can handle this, even for 2 minutes. Okay, so we're 5 minutes in, and the first core has thermal throttled, and now so have a few more. So we've got, I mean, it's saying it is, but none of them have hit 100. I'll be honest, guys, like, testing like this is not my area of expertise, so I'm fairly limited on my knowledge of how hardware info works. It seems to say it is thermal throttling, but that's not because of the specific core temperature. It's because something has caused it to throttle down inside the CPU based on various temperatures. If someone can explain this better, I'd really appreciate that. So, CPU is starting to almost hit 100 now, but we've been running this for 6 solid minutes. There we go. We've hit 100 on cores 4 and 5. GPU though, sitting at a nice cool 65-ish. Hotspot around 77, 78. The drives, we've got one at 64 degrees, the main one is still at 59 degrees, so everything kind of deep inside the motherboard there is fine. VRM also completely fine, 77 degrees, that's not a problem at all. The heat coming out of here is getting to the point where I'm getting a bit sweaty just being near it, and I don't think I could hold my hand there for more than about 10 seconds without it starting to hurt. So that's pretty cool. The case though is not getting unreasonably hot, not remotely kind of dangerous or anything to touch it. This side of the case is still nice and cold because that's all the air intake on the back. So all the heat is coming out of here. So all the P cores now have thermal throttled. But it took a while to get there. I mean, I'm pretty amazed by the performance of this little thing. But we're going to keep testing it. According to Intel, the new BIOS updates make the CPU safe. So doing this shouldn't really be doing any damage to anything, I hope. VRMs have hit 80 now, which is still completely fine. GPU is still about the temperature it would be with an air-cooled card in any normal case. And ambient temperature is 22.1 now. This thing is really heating up the room. So we are about 20 minutes into our simultaneous Firmark and Cinebench test, and it looks like 6 of the 8 P cores have now hit 100, which was to be expected with both of these things running at the same time. The heat being kicked out is just absurd. I've never felt a PC with this amount of heat coming out such a small area. It's completely nuts. The 2 drives, the hotter of the M.2 drives has peaked at 68. The other one has stayed at 59, which is quite impressive. Yeah, the active cooling on the motherboard is really doing its thing here because it's also kept the VRM at 86, which is quite good with everything that's going on in there, and it's right in the middle there. And we've cut the top off it. To keep that at 86 is good. I'm considering that a big win, that's not kind of getting dangerously hot. The CPU has been putting out 253 watts this entire time. The graphics card has been putting out 430 watts. So it's just a massive amount of heat. And even with the CPU running at 100% to 100 degrees and running a non-stop Firmark test for over 20 minutes, the graphics card is nowhere near thermal throttling. We're at 69.7, that's the maximum temperature. And then the hotspot maximum is 82, but that doesn't thermal throttle at the thermal limit of 83. That's my understanding anyway. I believe the GPU temperature would have to get to 83 for it to throttle, so that's awesome. Cinebench is about to finish, as is, well, I can stop Firmark whenever I want. So when Cinebench finishes, I'm going to stop Firmark as well, and we can just see how quickly all the temperatures come back down. Okay, so that's everything stopped. CPU's back down to 50 fairly immediately. GPU back down to the high 40s. Alright, and a few minutes have passed and everything is nice and quiet. Everything's cooled back down to a nice idle temperature now. And that's it. That's the end of the testing. I'm amazed that it performs as well as it does. It doesn't thermal throttle when you do a CPU only load, doesn't thermal throttle when you do a GPU only load. When you run both at the same time in a completely unrealistic test, only the CPU thermal throttles. It takes 5 minutes to do that, and even then it's not like bouncing off 100 degrees. It's very slowly getting there, never going above 100. And bear in mind, we haven't even considered undervolting anything. Everything is stock. We've got the stock BIOS settings other than the fan curves. Yeah, I want to keep it, but I can't because the customer's been waiting 8 months for this thing. So yeah, I'm going to very happily give them a call and tell them that it's fully working, fully tested, and it can pretty much take anything they're going to throw at it. So good result. And here's just a quick summary of all the temperatures and the wattages throughout the tests. Bear in mind though guys that this is quite an unscientific test. There are a lot of background tasks going on that the PC was running. The CPU idle in particular fluctuated wildly between about 15 watts and about 60 watts. Because as I said, we're screen recording, we've got various monitoring softwares open, we're downloading things at the same time. It's really just proof to us and proof to the customer of its performance. And it's gone really well. The only time it thermal throttled was with, I say it's a completely unrealistic test. There are some games that will run the CPU and the GPU on full, but it's very rare. And in that instance, it takes 5 to 10 minutes for the CPU cores to reach 100 degrees. Before we started any of this, we did say to the customer, look, it might thermal throttle in this case that you've chosen. And they were very much aware of that. So this is not, we're not letting anyone down by it thermal throttling. And the most important part of this is the gaming performance, and the GPU is nowhere near throttling, which is such a big achievement. We're really happy with that. And doing anything else in the real world, the CPU and the GPU are both perfectly within spec temperature-wise. The CPU, it's a hot CPU, so that was always going to be tough. But I think we achieved everything we wanted to do here. So sadly that is the end of the series for the toaster, but we're so happy with how this has turned out. I hope you guys have liked following the journey, and yeah, sorry it's taken so long to get finished, but we just became obsessed with perfecting every single part of this, and I really hope that shows. I think the end result is amazing. It's performed better than I thought it would, and yeah, I'm just thrilled with it. I really hope the customer likes it. We've been getting various updates from them throughout the journey, and they love it. But yeah, hopefully when they see it in person, it'll be worth the wait to them. It definitely wouldn't have turned out as well as it did if it wasn't for you guys watching. There's something about building something while filming it and putting it online in front of thousands of people that makes you really agonize over every single aspect of this. So yeah, all of you watching, you've really helped this to become what it has become. And yeah, please do subscribe to the channel. We're getting a lot more views on our videos than we have subscribers, so yeah, it would help us out if you subscribed, if you want to see more. We've got another build on the go already, which we started a while back, but we took a break on that to finish this. And we've got lots more builds coming up in the future. I need a new PC to edit on, so I'm going to be building that. We've got some updates and some more progress on the CPU block we're developing, which some of you might have seen. But yeah, I won't go into all that in too much detail. You're all awesome. The PC's awesome. It works great. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye.